Now, in February 2021, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala shattered glass ceilings to become the first woman, the first African to lead the World Trade Organization as its Director General. With a resume that boasts 2 terms as Nigeria's finance minister and time as managing director of the World Bank, she brought unparalleled expertise to a role tasked with steering global trade through one of its most tumultuous periods. Now, her first 4 years have been nothing short of transformative, from navigating the economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic to advocating for equitable vaccine distribution and also championing reforms for a more inclusive and fair global trading system. Okonjo-Iweala has centered her place as a formidable force on the global stage. Now, under her leadership, the WTO has prioritized resolving trade disputes, easing supply chain bottlenecks, and also promoting trade opportunities for developing nations like Nigeria in Africa. Now, her push for a WTO agreement on pandemic response, including making vaccines accessible to poorer countries, has actually been lauded as a landmark achievement. Additionally, she has been an outspoken advocate for trade policies that address climate change and digital trade, demonstrating her visionary approach to tackling 21st century challenges. Now, with her reappointment for a 2nd term, the world eagerly anticipates what more she will achieve as she continues to advocate for multilateralism and fairness in global trade.
First of all, that's a big word to get one time. I couldn't say it. For joining us to discuss Dr. Okonjo-Iweala's legacy and assess her first 4 years as the WTO Director General is Dr. Femi Egbesola, the President of the Small Business Owners Association, a well-versed economist, if I do say so myself, because I had a conversation with him during the week. You're welcome, Dr. Femi Egbesola. Thank you very much for joining us this morning again.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Dashin, if you would please, go ahead. Let's.
All right. I think I spoke to him a few days ago on the news as well. It's a pleasure to have you, by the way. Now, how would you assess Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala's performance as WTO Director General, over the past 4 years?
Oh, yes. I give it to her. I think she has done exceptionally well, and that's what guaranteed her the new position for the next 4 years, counting from September 1, 2025. During her first 4 years, she's been able to do a lot of transformation in WTO. She's been able to reform so many policies that has to do with trade, that has to do with negotiation, that has to do with inequalities, particularly when it comes to low-income countries and challenged countries, third world countries. She's been able to liberalize trade such that it's now easier for those countries to trade in the global markets and become global players also. I think she has also been very transparent during her first 4 years, and she has also run a government of inclusivity, because she made sure that all the countries, all the partner countries are carried along, particularly in the general meetings. And she also ensured that she strengthened all the hands that made up the WTO. And I think that's one of the reasons we did not have anybody competing with that during this contest for the new person that will lead in the WTO for the next 4 years.
It's good that you'd actually bring that in and talk about the fact that she came in for a 2nd term uncontested. Do you particularly note any particular policies that she might have executed that made that the instance? Perhaps maybe even when it comes to Africa. I do remember there was a fishing trade agreement she made where it is that developed countries cannot access African waters. And if they did, there was a very steep penalty, a very mouth-watering penalty for Africa. So what kind of policies could have engineered her unopposed 2nd term?
Yes, that's one of it. Another is that she intervened in the trade of agricultural and agro commodities globally, such that it is now easier, particularly for Africans, to now send out their agro products to anywhere in the world. You would understand that before coming on board, we have so many policies that mitigate export of agro commodities from Nigeria to many parts of the world, particularly the Europe, UK, and US. But that has been liberalized now. She has also made it possible, particularly for the Asian countries, in particular focus China, to be able to now trade seamlessly all over the world, particularly in the US. She has been able to liberalize it so much so that many of the bans before now were China and Asian products are now being lifted or being liberalized to the extent that if you go to America now, you will discover that most of the products that the Americans are using are coming from outside America, and that's a good one for the global market. However, the negative part of it is that the American government is against her nomination because they see her as pro-China or China ally, and they see her also supporting the blacks. But then we need to come to an equilibrium whereby the equality will be among all countries, all players in the global market, particularly when it comes to trade. And that's one thing she has been spearheading, and we think that it's a good one for the third world country, it's a good one for Africa, it's a good one for Asia, it's a good one for the entire world. She's also pushing a lot in climate change. And when it comes to climate change, you know that the advanced countries contribute more to climate damage. And they've been pushing it to the third world, they've been pushing it to Africa over time. But she's also been able to bring a balance in this, to say, yes, you are the one contributing more to climate change. And of course, that is the case when it comes to issues that has to do with climate change. You must contribute more resources to ensure that we reverse the trend, and at the same time be more committed and responsible to ensuring that climate change is tackled and brought to bear.
All right, now, Dr. Egbesola, now as the president of, Small Business Owners Association in Nigeria, can you tell us how her tenure has actually impacted small businesses in Nigeria, especially when it comes to competing internationally?
Yes, like I mentioned the other time, one of the major things she was able to do was to liberalize trade, particularly for the third world countries. Nigeria is more or less one of. Before now, it's very difficult for us to export some commodities, particularly food commodities like yam, like beans, like millets, and some other products to particularly America and Europe. And for now, it's been liberalized. We've been able to have that window where we can now trade these products globally, not just in Europe and America, but everywhere without hindrance. If America or UK or Europe accept products, it becomes a global acceptance. And that's what we are enjoying now. And particularly now that the economy is challenged, we find it difficult to sell locally. Because our currency is also devalued. So it's a big deal for us being able to now take our product out of the shores of the country to the global market to sell and earn dollars or euro, which is more valuable and translates to more profit for us. We give it to Okonjo-Iweala on that. And for that, I think there's every reason for the business community to also bring out their loud voice to congratulate Okonjo-Iweala for the big feat she's done for the past 4 years, or about 4 years, and looking forward for another 4 years of massive transformation when it comes to trade and negotiations.
Mm-hmm. I will give it up to her as well here at News Central. 2 terms as finance minister, 2 terms now, starting next year as World Trade Organization DG. Now, the question is, however, with such stellar performance and achievements from the past, doesn't it seem like Africa, doesn't it seem like Nigeria is losing out on something, some authority that should be in some place or some really particularly important position? Are we losing out on leadership when it comes to Okonjo-Iweala being elected a 2nd term as the WTO? Could she do more inside of the Nigerian or a Nigerian administrative system, do you think?
Well, yes. If given the opportunity, I think she has a lot to contribute to the Nigerian economy and the growth of our economy here. But then she has done it in the past. Like you mentioned, she was the former Minister of Finance, and for some time she was also the Minister for Foreign Affairs. And during those years, she contributed massively to restructuring our finance policy, our fiscal policy, and till today we're enjoying it. You remember the Treasury single, I think it's the TCA, she did that, whereby every single money goes to one account for government. There's also the payroll system, which she did at that time too. I think these are very golden initiatives that is still enduring till now. But then we need some of our whole to be in the global space. I think having her there is a good one for us. It's a very good brand of the country. It shows that Nigeria is not just about corruption. Nigeria is not just about Yahoo and all of that and crime. Nigeria could also produce very good products, and she's spearheading and leading that exceptionally. We also need her there so that Africa can also become global players when it comes to trade. She has done a lot to support Africa in that 4 years. She has also done a lot to bring African trade to the limelight, and we need that. We cannot just be playing locally. We need to also be in the international scene. She's one woman that is representing us very well, exceptionally well in the international scene, and we need more of Nigerians to come out to also become leaders like Okonjo-Iweala. And I'm also sure that she's also mentoring and grooming many other leaders who she must be part of those who are also being consulted by the government for critical decisions, particularly when it comes to economy, finance, and trade. And I'm sure she, in her own large way, she's influencing some policy reforms in the country. And I'm also sure that some of the new initiatives of government has some of her contributions.
Let's focus on her 2 times as Nigerian Minister of Finance. Now, during which she actually helped in negotiating where we had $30 billion debt actually wiped out. And I think cancellation of about $18 billion of debt as well. She did so well. Her negotiations are fantastic. She also was part of the team that helped out with the government integration financial management system, where they helped work against corruption in Nigeria. A very transparent system it became at the time. So the question, like I said from before, would it be too much to ask if we said, okay, for a second term that her focus should be plenty on Nigeria, especially with the debts that we find ourselves accruing currently from our current administration?
Well, you're right. I think Nigeria needs to continue to engage her. The Nigerian government needs to continue to engage as much as they can, because she has contributed so much, particularly writing off our debts from the Paris Club creditors as at the time she was the minister. And that can also happen again if Nigeria use her influence, her capacity to the limit to help us also have that same or even more than what she did that time. But I think for me, it's better she remains in the global scene. She has more role to play in the global scene. She has more influence to make in the global scene. And I also think that Africa needs a representative to be able to liberalize trade in the global scene. So we should not be just selfish about Nigeria alone. Africa as a whole, we need someone who can support us to make us grow in trade, grow in economy. And I must also say that she's also contributing a lot to Nigeria when it comes to influencing WTO to support Nigeria. I've seen quite a number of initiatives that has happened in Nigeria for the past 2-3 years that is being influenced and sponsored by the WTO. These are some of the things that are gains for Nigeria. I also believe too that, like I mentioned the other time, government must find a way to continue to engage her, to continue to see how she can help and advise when it comes to policies and policy reforms, particularly when it comes to trade, and at the same time to see how they can engage her, even while on seats as the chair of the WTO, to still help us negotiate for debt issues and debt cancellation. I also want to see the governments using their best possible attempts to see that she is mentoring those ones, so that eventually, when she retires, we'll have many more Okonjo-Iwealas in the country, both in men and women, taking the affairs of our country and becoming global players too.
Okay, now we've talked about, trade, and we've talked about, how she has pushed for so much. And one other thing we know is, technology is actually taking over a lot, in our time. And we know that she's actually pushed for more digital trade. Would like for you to tell us how, you feel it has affected sectors like, the tech sector and also the e-commerce sector.
Well, in today's world, whether anybody likes it or not, if you are not adopting technology, adopting digital technology, sooner or later one will fade out. So it's a good thing that Okonjo-Iweala is also spearheading the use of technology, digital technology, to drive trade. And that is being adopted everywhere in the world now, not just Nigeria. We see everyone now engaging in sales, trade, and marketing with the use of digital platforms. And that's where the world is also turning to. You also see a lot of fintechs now using technology to support trade. We also see a lot of startups now in Nigeria and outside Nigeria using technology to support trade. That's the only way we can become globally relevant and have more access to market. And I'm happy that it's one of the focus of the WTO under the leadership of Okonjo-Iweala, and a lot, millions of billions of dollars has been spent to improve digital technology, particularly when it comes to trade. Today, we also have different hubs that are being created and supported by WTO to enhance trade, and they are free. It's just for you to download and begin to support your business, particularly in terms of access to market. We in Nigeria here, particularly we in the business community, are using some of these applications, some of these digital technologies to also support our business, and it is bringing out the best in us. And that's why you see that even with the many myriads of challenges we have in Nigeria, the SME community is still thriving and succeeding. Many thanks to people like Okonjo-Iweala that are doing one thing or the other to support our community. One of it is the digital technology that is being brought to trade, to markets, and to negotiations that is bringing very good results. And I'm also sure that this new 4 years, she's going to do much more because she promised to bring about equality, more of equality among nations. And that means that we will not see one big country bigger than us when it comes to trade. We will also be able to trade liberally on the same table without any fear or favor.
Being a member of teams that actually have the responsibility for climate change in the world, not just in Africa now, one has to ask what her contributions have been regarding Africa, seeing that along with e-commerce that we've just talked about, there's a very big hunger for energy. And in Africa, where we're trying to transit into renewable energy, what policies has she been a part of that actually helped with this system in Africa, especially here in Nigeria, where we're still battling with fossil fuels and Dangote refineries? What could she do as well in the next 4 years that could focus on renewable energy in Africa that could help businesses?
Yes, the past 4 years, she's been able to bring on the table equality when it comes to climate change and climate change issues. One of it is that she made the Western world realize that they are the major contributor to climate issues, climate challenges. And of course, that has been pushed to Africa before now, that it is Africa that is actually polluting the climate. It is Africa that is responsible for the climate issues that we have. But she's been able to push it back to them, that they have more industries, they have more pollution in their countries. Yes, we may say that the Africans have not been able to manage pollution well, but how much is the quantity of the pollution generated from Africa? That she has been able to do. Again, also, she has also been able to make sure that for the fact that they contribute more to climate issues, they should also pay more when it comes to supporting initiatives that is to arrest climate change anomalies, and that she's been able to do. So for the next 4 years, we want to see her pushing more on that. We want to see ensuring that initiatives that will also help African countries, particularly Nigeria, to accept climate change, to go green, to go blue, and to also adopt initiatives that will help to recycling a lot of that happens more in Nigeria. One way it can happen is by helping to shape policies in Nigeria that has to do with climate change, and at the same time also sponsoring initiatives with funding from the WTO that will also support climate change initiative. Yes, government is doing the little they can in Nigeria, but you and I agree that that is far not enough. If you have funding from organizations like WTO coming up to support climate change initiatives in Nigeria, I'm sure a lot will happen. Many of our people now are not even aware of climate change, they don't know what it is. So a lot of advocacy, a lot of awareness needs to be done, and a lot of structures needs to be put in place to arrest climate change. That cannot be achieved if Okonjo-Iweala focus on this for Nigeria and particularly Africa for the next 4 years.
Yeah, but Dr. Egbesola, let's also note that to be able to effect climate change or anything that has to work for climate change, even the countries have to be prepared themselves. Africa doesn't seem like as if, well, most of Africa doesn't seem like it's prepared for climate change. We're still exporting fridges and freezers that destroy the atmosphere. We are a dumping ground. Are there any policies so far, whether by Okonjo-Iweala or by the body she represents, that have helped us to mitigate or cancel out these imports into Africa that help us degrade further our environment?
I would not say that Africa, particularly Nigeria, is not prepared for climate change or are not building structures now. You will discover that last year, circular economy was launched in Nigeria. Lagos was the center where it was launched, where the federal government invited climate change experts and adopted circular economy as a way to go in Nigeria. And now we also have an action plan for the next 5 years on climate change and circular economy. And that's why you now see states like Lagos State, they're banning sachet water, banning plastic water, banning styrofoams and all of that, and ensuring that every state in Nigeria now have an agency that controls emission and pollution. We also see that there are now structures in all the states that have to do with recycling of waste. And we still have a long way to go, really. But there are some pockets of initiative here and there. There are some structures here and there that is being created by the government to mitigate against the issues of climate change. I also understand too that there's now a national committee on climate change formed by the federal government to also draw up a roadmap that we can use to arrest climate change, aside from the action plan that's already been drafted. So this may not be enough to arrest the enormous issues that surround climate change in Nigeria, but I think there are baby steps that we can begin to take advantage on and begin to see how we can go there. Yes, we need expert support. We need funding. We also need a lot of awareness among our people. It's the duty of the federal government, but anything that has to do with the climate is also the duty of everybody involved. Because when it happens, we are all affected, even more than those big actors in government. We, the common man, are more affected. So I think a lot of awareness needs to be done so that everybody takes it as a responsibility to be climate change conscious and to know what to do to put our climate and our environment in good shape. I'm happy that you're also discussing this on the TV station. I think the media too needs to do a lot of work in sensitizing the public about climate change issues and how they can be responsible and help their community to align with the SDG goals, particularly those that has to do with climate change.
You know, Mazino actually did ask, did say that, some African countries don't seem to be ready for, climate change. And it actually made me wonder, if Okonjo-Iweala, meets for example, we know that she has actually done so much for developing countries and all that. And I know, it's actually still part of her plan. But do you think that, Nigerian leaders or Nigeria in itself would be ready to work with her, with some, when it comes to some of her policies?
Well, we have no choice as a country than to do what we have. Whether we like it or not, we just must work with her because the implication, the negative implications of climate change is already imminent on our country. You can see the way diseases are ravaging now, particularly cancer. Now it has been detected that there are microplastics in our blood system. These are serious issues that every responsible government should be ready to embrace with totality and perhaps pay more than the usual attention to. In Nigeria in particular, like I mentioned, we are beginning to wake up. We've not woken up well enough, but we're beginning to wake up. And I also want to believe that Okonjo-Iweala and her team will do more in Nigeria, particularly third world country, as she has been doing before now, to ensure that things go the right way. African countries now, quite a number of countries are also taking responsibility when it comes to climate change. This initiative that is being adopted here in Nigeria, the banning single plastic use and all of that, has been initiated 2-3 years ago by some countries like Uganda, Kenya, Ghana, and even Mozambique. Yes, they've initiated it 2-3 years ago. You can't find single-use plastics in their system. Meaning that they are also ready to accept the new initiatives that comes with climate change. But many African countries are not yet ready. And that means a lot needs to be done about African countries, preparing them for climate change matters and how to address climate change issues. And the only way that can be done is by building institutions. The influence of just one person like Okonjo-Iweala may not be able to do much. Each economy needs to be strong institutions to see to climate change matters and also be ready to make mechanism work for them to be able to institute laws, bills that will arrest climate change issues. And for those who are not ready to cope, to abide with those laws, punitive measures should stand out to be able to ensure that there's full compliance to climate change laws in each of the countries. We've not gotten there, but I believe we will get there over time because we cannot run away from the negative impact of climate change matters. And the more we go into the years, the more serious the implications will be if it is not arrested now.
Well, Dr. Egbesola, now you did, speak at length on, some of the things that she should be doing in the next 4 years. But then with her reappointment, would love for you, we're about winding down, I would love for you in like a minute to tell us what you think her top priorities should be. First, top 3 priorities, let's start with that.
Yes, I think the first priority to me should be that the WTO, under the leadership of Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala for the next 4 years, should be to strengthen economies. Best way to strengthen economies is through trade. If economies are doing well through trade, there will be no need for them to be borrowing money from the World Bank or other funding institutions. And that will make economies more structured and more dependable on themselves, which would bring about economic growth. I also want to see Okonjo-Iweala influencing policies that will liberalize trade the more. Liberalize trade in the sense that we need to make the world really borderless, like the African Continental Free Trade Area we have in Africa now, that makes it borderless for us to sell our product anywhere in Africa. We should be able to extend it, particularly to the developed countries, where we must be able to sell our products. Again, too, I want to see Okonjo-Iweala working on improving standards of the third world products. One of the mitigating factors against the exportation of third world products and services is because they are considered as substandard and unbranded, and this can also be worked on. If the WTO makes pragmatic approach to be able to support industries in the third world country, in the developing countries, to be able to meet up with standards, this can only be done with very strong initiative and funding. I also want to see Okonjo-Iweala bringing about unity among all the, say, 164 countries, and perhaps even bringing more countries on board so that they can be part of the WTO, and negotiations would be more borderless among these countries. Finally, I want to see WTO bringing about peace. There are some countries that are not happy that we are having another black woman taking the leadership of WTO. But our new tenure should be able to bring more peace so that after our exit, we can see very active black players on the WTO board because she's been able to set legacies, structures, institutions that will live beyond our time.
Dr. Egbesola, thank you very much. Makes you wonder what it's going to be like, because Dashin asked this question earlier, what it would be like if she ran a, let's say, West African country with population 150 million, oil-rich, by the way.
Hypothetically.
What do you think it will be like? Would it be bliss?
It would be paradise. I see her bringing about paradise if she has opportunity to contribute for some countries, perhaps West African countries as a whole. She is full of energy, even at her age. She's full of ideas. She's very intelligent. She has excellent leadership qualities, and she's a well-bred. And no doubt she has so many awards to her name. And we look forward to having some more people like her in our ecosystem taking the lead in Nigeria, in West Africa, and in Africa.
That's the best way to end this. That's a love letter to Okonjo-Iweala herself. Thank you very much, Dr. Egbesola, for being with us on the show here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.